What's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. I've got my Week 10 wide receiver rankings right here for you. We're going to jump into my top 30. And also make sure you watch to the very end because I list a few notable players. We started this last week. A lot of you liked it. So we're going to keep it going. So at the very end, we're going to flip through a few notable players that didn't quite make the top 30, and I'll let you know why and whether or not you should still be considering them as a start in your lineup this week. There's also been a couple of changes for my start and sit video based on some of the information that we've gotten over the last couple of days. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and we'll take a look starting at number 30. Number 30, John Brown. John Brown revenge game going up against his former Arizona team. All right, maybe it won't necessarily be a revenge game for John Brown, but definitely an opportunity for him to have a big week. Looked healthy finally last week. That's the main thing. If John Brown is healthy, definitely has the opportunity to put up some big numbers across from Stephon Diggs. At number 25, Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard going up against Philadelphia, a team that allows quite a bit of fantasy points per game. Also, almost 10 targets per game since returning from the IR. So, Sterling Shepard, definitely a guy that Daniel Jones has been looking at quite a bit. Now, even though I like the matchup, and even though he has been the wide receiver one on that team since coming back from injury, we're going to keep him a little bit lower because it is Daniel Jones. It is the Giants. Number 28, Marvin Jones Jr., the wide receiver one going up against Washington this week. He is the wide receiver one. He's going to see some volume, but it's a tough matchup. Washington does a good job at limiting points to opposing wide receivers. With Marvin Jones Jr., would like to have him a little bit higher, but because it is a tough matchup, I'm not expecting Kenny Golladay to play either. So before any of you ask, no, I don't think Kenny Galladay's playing. He's yet to really be able to do anything. I'm not going to roll with that. So Marvin Jones, the wide receiver one. However, difficult matchup, which leaves his ceiling much lower than what we would like. At number 27, Curtis Samuel. Talked about him in the start and sit video and how Tampa Bay allows is tied for second for the most receptions to opposing running backs, and Christian McCaffrey will be out this week. Now, Mike Davis, you would probably think about him and say, hey, this is the guy that we want to have in the lineup, but Curtis Samuel has been getting involved in the game plan more and more over the last couple of weeks. Talked about it right after the injury to Christian McCaffrey, that I thought Curtis Samuel would end up doing that, and he didn't. It was Mike Davis to start. But now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Curtis Samuel getting more work. So expect to see him a little bit all over the field this week. I've got him as a start this week. I do not have DJ Moore as a start this week. At number 26, Mike Williams going up against Miami. He's the big play guy there. Definitely has that opportunity to put up some big plays. At number 25, Justin Jefferson going up against Chicago on Monday night. This is going to be an awful matchup for him. Also an awful matchup for Adam Thielen. We'll talk about Adam Thielen in a few minutes. But for Justin Jefferson, he has more big play upside for me than what Adam Thielen does. And that's one of the reasons why I think Justin Jefferson is a guy that can actually save his value this week. But one of the problems that we have with Minnesota right now is how much they are running the football. Expect another heavy dose of Dalvin Cook against Chicago. So that's going to leave us with fewer targets, and then we have to decide at that point who does the most with their targets. If I had to put my money on somebody doing the most with their targets, I'm putting it on Justin Jefferson over Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen might see some more targets. Justin Jefferson has the better ability to take something big to the house. At number 24, T. Higgins. We welcome Cincinnati back. T. Higgins at number 24 because Pittsburgh, they do give up quite a few points to opposing wide receivers. They're about middle of the pack. However, they give up a lot of big plays to wide receivers over the course of the season, allowing more receptions of 40-plus yards than anybody else. Jarvis Landry at number 23 gets a really good matchup against Houston. This is a team that could absolutely hit the over. Jarvis Landry here for me. Rashad Higgins is going to be just outside the top 30 for me as well. I like Rashad Higgins this week too. I'm not going to put him in the notable players, but he is a guy that if you were really desperate for like a wide receiver 3, I could see that, but we get Nick Chubb back this week and Austin Hooper. So even though it's a really good matchup for wide receivers, we're taking a look at their ceiling being a little bit lower than what we may want. Nelson Aguilar going up against Denver at number 22. Nelson Aguilar, a guy, he's got touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games. Not necessarily all of the big plays that we may have been expecting from him, but Derek Carr and Nelson Aguilar are 100% on the same page right now, which is excellent for him. He's the wide receiver 1 and a good matchup going against the Denver pass defense. We're going to put Nelson Aguilar in our lineup this week. At number 21, Devontae Parker against the Chargers. I originally had Devontae Parker as a start with Preston Williams as a start, but I told you in that video both of the ceilings could be a little bit lower. However, now that we know Preston Williams is heading to the IR and will not be playing, Devontae Parker gets a pretty big bump for me here, and I move him up to 21. He's still a start regardless. He was a start before the injury to Williams and after. However, he probably would have been a little bit closer to that 28-29 range had Williams been healthy. Now that he's not, he bumps up a few spots for me, basically factoring in a few more targets. At number 20, Mr. Tyler Boyd. Again, basically the same thing from T. Higgins. Now, we don't know if Joe Mixon's going to play or not. If Joe Mixon does not play, I think that helps a little bit because when Joe Mixon plays, that's targets I have to go to Mixon and Gio. Gio isn't just necessarily getting more targets because Mixon is out. He's still going to be getting about the same that he normally would. There would be other targets filtering in over to Mixon, but he's gone now. So that does help Tyler Boyd a little bit if Mixon is out, but kind of the same thing with T. Higgins. Yes, Pittsburgh about middle of the road defending the pass. It's the big play. Cincinnati's probably going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. I would like to move Tyler Boyd a little bit higher, but this is one of these games too where, if the pass rush from Pittsburgh can get into the backfield and just stay there the entire game, there might not be enough time for Burrow to throw, and that's what causes these guys to be a little bit lower. Chris Godwin at number 19. Got Chris Godwin at number 19 going up against Carolina. It's a tough defense to go up against. They've been very good against the pass this year. You've got Antonio Brown. You've got Mike Evans. You've got Rob Gronkowski. And last week, Leonard Fournette was a pretty big deal in the passing game. Mike Evans is a sit for me this week. Antonio Brown is a start. And Chris Godwin is a start. Chris Godwin, I still think could see a decent amount of volume. Hopefully he can make some big plays out of it. At number 18, Deontay Johnson. If Deontay Johnson is healthy, Deontay Johnson plays. And right now, he's healthy. He is a guy that when he's on the field, Ben Roethlisberger treats him as the wide receiver 1. Last week, Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, who's coming up at number 15, and Claypool all had pretty decent games. This week, going up against Cincinnati, another pretty decent matchup. But is the ball going to be spread out between all of them again? And not only that, Eric Ebron has a banger of a matchup against Cincinnati as well. So that to me means I think some of that volume that could have gone here is going to go to Ebron a little bit. If they get up like I kind of expected them to last week, is James Conner going to run quite a bit? James Conner not coming off a great week, but going up against Cincinnati, it could be much better. So if they get up big on them, do they run more with James Conner? So there's some things to factor in there. I think Juju Smith-Schuster at 15 is safer than Deontay Johnson at 18, and that's why I've got him a couple of spots higher. Juju kind of on that resurgence, looking a lot better over the last several weeks than what he did to begin the season. And a lot of people were kind of starting to give up on Juju, right? They were kind of moving away from him and saying, oh man, without Antonio Brown, this guy just isn't the same that he used to be. And I get it. For a while there, it was tough, right? He started off the season 2 touchdowns, 69 yards, 48 yards, 43 and a touchdown. So those first 3 weeks, not bad. But all of a sudden we go 28 yards and 6 yards. And now everybody freaks out. 2 matchups that should have been a lot better for him, we didn't do anything with. But then, since then, he's got games of 14 targets, 9 receptions, 85 yards, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 67 yards, and last week against Dallas, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 93 yards, and another touchdown. So it looks like they're starting to go back to him a little bit more. Deontay Johnson's got some of that upside for me. He's a little bit of a bigger play threat than what Juju Smith-Schuster is. And then Chase Claypool, who is outside my top 30 this week, he is a guy that, again, will come up here pretty soon at the very end. Actually, no, he's not in the notable players. So for Chase Claypool, he is way more boom or bust for me because what we've seen over the course of the season is that when everybody's healthy, Chase Claypool has a much bigger problem staying consistent. And that's what we kind of want to see, right? I mean, if you are in desperation mode, you can throw out Chase Claypool if you really want to. I mean, really what happened with Chase Claypool, week 2, he goes 88 yards and a touchdown. All right, that's good. We see here, okay, he's a guy that can contribute right away. He goes 24 yards on only 1 reception the week after that against Houston. And then Philadelphia. Okay, Philadelphia, he started that game, the first game he started of the season. 11 targets, 7 receptions, and 3 touchdowns. All of a sudden, boom, guy goes ballistic. He goes 4-4, 74 the week after that. And now all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, Chase Claypool, automatic start. But then since then, 1 target, 1 reception, -2 yards. 9 targets, 5 receptions, 42 yards. A touchdown ended up saving him there against Baltimore. And 13 targets, 8 receptions, 69 yards against Dallas, when Dallas was actually a lot more competitive than what we probably assumed. Again, when I talked about those wide receivers last week, really liked the matchup. But if the Steelers were to get up early, which I thought could happen, they're going to run it with James Conner. But they weren't able to get up and stay up on Dallas. Dallas stuck with them. And that caused some issues again last week. So everybody was able to get enough targets. But again, in a game against Cincinnati, if they were able to get up on them very early, if they don't have to throw the entire game, is Chase Claypool going to be able to get those type of targets? That's why I've got Johnson and Juju here, and I've got him outside of it. Number 17, Robbie Anderson. You know, Robbie Anderson started the season hot, and it's unfortunate that it's kind of gone a little bit downhill since then, especially given the fact that he's had some really good matchups that just hasn't performed in. Last week, he did get back to 13 targets, which was great to see, but he hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 5. So for me, going up against Tampa, even though Tampa really was not able to do anything to stop New Orleans last week, I think we're going to see them bounce back a little bit. And New Orleans and Carolina are different teams to me. Robbie Anderson still is a guy I think brings the big play threat, and a guy that Teddy Bridgewater has a lot of connection with right now, and that's why I just can't move away from him. DJ Chark at number 16. And this is why it's so important that everybody watches the start-sit videos and the rankings videos together. Okay, not necessarily at the same time, but make sure you catch both during the week. DJ Chark is exactly why. DJ Chark, for me, going into the week was a sit. Not even in my top 30. Why? Because Jaire Alexander, the cornerback 1 for the Green Bay Packers, was likely to be on DJ Chark. However, at the time that I did the start and sit video, the start and sit videos we do really early in the week, and then when we get these rankings videos done more towards Thursday Night Football. At the time, Jaire Alexander, yes, was coming off a concussion, but things seem to be pointing in the right direction. However, here we are Thursday evening, and he still hasn't practiced, and he's still in the protocol, and now they're saying it is unlikely that he could be cleared. He was not doubtful earlier in the week. He's still not doubtful. He is listed as questionable right now. But no Jaire Alexander, for me, is a huge upgrade for DJ Chark. Even King right now is a little bit beat up, so their cornerback 2 could even be out. This is a great opportunity for Chark going into a game in which Green Bay obviously is going to be able to get up on them by quite a bit. Chark is going to see a bunch of volume now, and if he doesn't have any Jaire Alexander on him, then he is a guy that is now switched from being a sit to being a start. And now I'm going from starting Shenault to sitting Shenault. Laviska Shenault and Chris Connolly were starts for me. DJ Chark was a sit because I thought they were going to have to move those targets out away from him. But now because he becomes a sit with a start with no Alexander, Shenault becomes a sit for me. Conley's going to say a start because they seem to have pretty good connection last week with Lutton. And then now Chark again will be a start along with him. 15, Juju Smith-Schuster, already talked about him a couple minutes ago. Brandon Cooks at number 14, banger of a matchup going up against Cleveland this week. His guy on the other side of him, Will Fuller, we'll talk about him in a second, but Brandon Cooks, a lot of upside this week. Tyler Lockett at number 13, going up against the LA Rams. This is a difficult matchup, and I still have him at 13 right now. I've got him a little bit lower than the consensus, but I've got him a little bit lower than the consensus right now because I'm interested to see if they put him in the slot. Now, the last time I talked about Tyler Lockett playing out of the slot, he didn't really do anything. But if Robert Woods ends up having Jalen Ramsey this week, that's going to cause some problems. Or excuse me, not Robert Woods. I've got Robert Woods on the screen next to me, and he's highlighted because he's in my top 10. That was DK Metcalf. More than likely, DK Metcalf will see Jalen Ramsey. Okay. That means that Tyler Lockett could be free to roam out of the slot. If for some reason Lockett ends up staying outside a little bit more, there is a chance that he could also see a little bit of Ramsey. So right now I've got him at 13 because, again, he's really the boomer bust guy, right? He can win some weeks. He can lose some weeks. Right now I've got him at 13. This could be a week that he could win if they keep him in the slot. A.J. Brown at number 12 going up against Indianapolis on Thursday Night Football. He's a big play guy, right? A.J. Brown is a grown man. A.J. Brown can go out there and do things that a lot of wide receivers really wish that they could do. Even in a tough matchup, still got him as a wide receiver 1 because he's got that big play ability. Cooper Kupp at number 11. Now we're moving on to the Los Angeles Rams. Getting the Seattle Seahawks this week. A great matchup for them. I think Cooper Kupp gets back on board with a big week this week. In PPR and half PPR format. Standard could be a little bit down, but I expect him and Robert Woods both to score touchdowns this week. Will Fuller at number 10, my Manscaped must start of the week. I told you why. Cleveland gives up a ton of fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. And the Texans are going to go in and absolutely destroy Cleveland, I think. I don't know if Cleveland is going to be able to keep up with Houston this week. Will Fuller is going to have some big is going to have some big touches this week. He's got the big playability. He's going to have a big touchdown. He's got touchdowns in like all but 2 games this season. Get ready for that ride. Terry McLaurin at number 7 going up against Detroit. Detroit's a bunch of idiots. They don't know how to stop anybody. They're not going to be able to stop Terry McLaurin. Allen Robinson at number 6 going up against Minnesota. This could be another really good matchup. I like this matchup for Allen Robinson. Minnesota has been dealing with some injuries in the secondary. They give up a lot of fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney. Okay, Darnell Mooney is a guy. I have him listed as a start this week. Had him listed as a start last week, and he really just missed it. Darnell Mooney last week had 11 targets, led the team, and he was 1 foot away from having a big touchdown and really would have catapulted him up into probably the top 20 wide receivers. So Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson, both starts for me this week. A-Rob, of course, being that wide receiver 1, the alpha male of that offense, comes in at number 6. DK Metcalf at number 5. Yeah, he's going to see some Jalen Ramsey. I don't care. DK Metcalf, you don't sit DK Metcalf. You don't walk away from DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf can make anybody look like a Pop Warner cornerback that just got their face smashed into the ground. Okay, DK Metcalf gonna go. Even if it's a little bit of a lower week, he's got that huge upside every single time he steps on the field. Keenan Allen at number 4, another great matchup going up against Miami, gets a ton of targets. And that, I mean, not only does that fuel his fantasy value, but the reason he's so high up now is because he's getting the targets and making the big plays. Stephon Diggs, even if he gets some Patrick Peterson this week, I don't care. Stephon Diggs is just glorious. He is a glorious football player. We talked about him on the Straight Chubb podcast this week over on Patreon, our exclusive podcast. Dude balls. And then obviously DeAndre Hopkins at number 2 and Davante Adams at number 1. I don't think you move Davante Adams out of the number 1 spot again this year. Let's talk about some quick notable players. Number 1, Travis Fulgham. He's still a sit for me. He's still a sit. I really don't care what any of you say. Why? Because he's going to get James Bradberry this week. And James Bradberry is definitely a guy that can limit Travis Fulgham. Jalen Reagor will play in the slot more than Fulgham will. And because of that, Jalen Ramsey will see less of James Bradberry. Okay? It's going to be Fulgham that's going to get him. That's a problem. Okay? Bradberry has been excellent so far this year. Now, the last time that they faced off against the Giants, okay, was back in week 7. In that matchup against the Giants, okay, Fulgham went for, and I just lost, he went for 11 targets, okay? But keep in mind, in that game, there was no Jalen Reagor, there was no Dallas Goedert, there was no Zach Ertz. You're still missing your other top options. Okay. Fulgham was the only guy outside of Richard Rodgers that you could really throw to. Greg Ward too. Okay. Fulgham had 11 targets forced his way with Bradberry on him. Only caught 5 of them And he did end up going for 73 yards, but that was because one of those was a 40-yard catch. But now you've got Dallas Goedert back. Now you got Jalen Reagor back. Okay? That helps. That means Carson Wentz doesn't have to force 11 targets to Travis Fulgham, which means that he has to then turn a less amount of targets into bigger plays. And against James Bradberry, that's really, really difficult. Jalen Reagor for me is a start. Coming out of the slot, he is a guy that I absolutely think could have a big week this week. Not inside my top 30. I'm still going to play it safe, but he is right on the cusp, right on the outside of the top 30. If you were to say, Kyle, will you play Reagor over Fulgham this week? I'm going to say yes. If you think I'm crazy, I don't care. If you think I'm stupid, I don't care. If you think I don't do my research, I don't care. If you think, I don't care what you think if you don't agree with me. That's fine, you don't agree with me. Play him if you want to. He's helped you get this far. Don't sit him. But just be prepared if he has a low output. If he doesn't score, Travis Fulgham doesn't get double-digit points this week. He has to score a touchdown, and the volume won't be there to help make up for it. That's why I'm concerned. Christian Kirk is a start for me as well this week, but he's just outside the top 30. Going up against Buffalo, tough matchup, but the dude's been absolutely eating wide receiver 7 since week 4, so it's really hard to sit a guy who's been so hot. Adam Thielen, he is a sit for me this week. Now, I know back in week 1, I also listed him as a sit, and it caused some issues. Why? Because he ended up having a pretty big week. But also with Adam Thielen, keep in mind that he scored that became a big week for Adam Thielen because of the fourth quarter, because they were getting absolutely shellacked by Green Bay. Okay, he scored 2 touchdowns in that game, but the problem is, though, going into the fourth quarter, he had like 3 receptions for 40 yards. It was because they were down by 30 something points and they were trying to come back and had to just sling it. Okay, so outside of that one game, he has been scoring some touchdowns, which is good. But he's just been on a downward trajectory since week 4. Week 4, he goes 8, 114, 1. Week 6 or 5 against Seattle, Houston was a great matchup, and that was the 8, 114, 1. Seattle was a great matchup. That was 982. He gets Atlanta, a good matchup as well, but he only goes 351 and a touchdown. If he doesn't score that touchdown, that's not a good day. And then he gets Green Bay. Okay? Green Bay, Alexander was on Justin Jefferson the entire time. Goes up against Green Bay, 3 for 27. Then he gets Detroit last week, another defense that's not that good. He goes 2 for 38. The problem is that Justin Jefferson has really established himself as a main connection within that offense. So as he's grown in that offense, Thielen has started to decline a little bit. And on top of that, they're running the football a lot more. So only 5, 4, and 5 targets over the last 3 weeks because they are really looking to Dalvin Cook to just punish the football. I mean, Dalvin Cook comes back in week 8, 30 rushing attempts. In week 9, 22 rushing attempts. The dude is just absolutely lighting it up. 163 and 206 yards over the last 2 weeks. Going up against Chicago, why not run the football some more? Why not control the game and get away from that? 2 more notable players, excuse me. Almost started coughing there. 2 more notable players, Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick, going up against Las Vegas. I think this is going to be a back and forth game. I think this is a game that's going to have a lot of points scored. Both of those guys are starts for me this week. I just don't have them in the top 30 because Drew Lock for me is still a little bit inconsistent. And Noah Fant, again, another big weapon in that offense. Would like to see him a little bit more involved than what he was last week. Does he get more involved this week? We'll have to keep an eye on that. But that's why Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick just outside my top 30. There you have it, Headliner Nation. We got to get you ready for football. Get your lineup set. Get ready to roll. Running back rankings are already out. You've got your wide receiver rankings now. Tight ends, quarterbacks coming up later. All right, so make sure you get ready for week 10. Do me a favor, if you appreciate that content, hit that like button down below. If you got questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you don't like that I have Travis Fulgham as a sit this week, I don't care. Don't comment. Just move on. Anyway, make sure that you subscribe as well. Most important thing, if you're new to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Really close to 112,000 subscribers. So Headliner Nation, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.